Welcome to Talking Twaddle, a Better Being Me podcast, the podcast where we unpack the neurodivergent experience, not just in theory, but in all its messy, beautiful, everyday reality. I'm Joanne Hatchard, and I'm here because I believe something important. Your story might feel deeply personal and even isolating, but it's not unique. That might sound strange at first because in the thick of it, when you're feeling like an alien at the window, disconnected from your body, or like you're constantly just one step outside of belonging, it feels so personal, like no one else could possibly understand. But here's the thing, those exact feelings, they're shared over and over again across this beautifully neurodivergent community. So this podcast isn't about highlighting one way to be or do neurodivergence right. It's about making space for all of the common threads in our story, the ones that remind us we're not alone, we're not broken, and we're not doing this by ourselves. This is our journey, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. Welcome to the next episode of Talking Twaddle, your Better Being Me podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Hatchard from Better Being Me. Today, I have my special guest star is Amelia. Amelia is a beautiful neurodivergent folk and has brightened my world in so many different ways. They have just released a business, Neurotopical, branching out into the world of private practice for social workers. But today we're talking about their journey on the neurodivergent train. Toot toot, jump on board.
Woohoo!
Welcome, Amelia.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and love all the compliments. That's my favorite part. Oh, you keep complimenting me.
Join all the podcasts just so you can get the compliments at the intro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Down for that. I reckon that'd be a good
go.
Yay. Welcome. And thank you for your willingness to share your journey. It can be a very private experience, but I think the benefit of sharing is that everybody gets to hear that there is a common thread in all of our stories and that we don't need to feel as isolated as we may have done in the past.
Yeah, and I think the journey for me is that's the big kind of important thing that I see and I talk about and I like to go with people with, but I also think it's just like something we could use more and research more to inform kind of the future journeys of the next generation.
Next generation? What are we? How old are we? Yeah, let's not go there.
Yeah, let's not. What is it? Autistic people age
gracefully. Like 10 years behind in so many different ways.
Exactly. So that's actually how old I am.
I wouldn't mind like late mothers. I would really like to give them like an autism screening test because perhaps it's nothing other than autism.
That always really gets me in the research when the researcher's like, having children later in life connects to having autistic children. I'm like, is that because the people who are having children later in life are actually autistic themselves? Like, yeah, like correlation, causation, what's actually going on here? But people love to,
They like to have a really short, like a short arrow.
They like to be like, that's the reason, and that's bad. And I'm like, no, that's incorrect.
That's incorrect. I have a bit of bugbear around geriatric pregnancies. If the body's still producing the eggs, then the body's still able to have the babies. So
yeah, you make a great point.
It's
a very, very big reason why I did not go into medicine. No one would be able to stand me.
Yeah, but it might not be for that. But if we reflect on your journey,
yes,
to the neurodivergent train, I'm sticking with that metaphor today.
I love it.
Thank you.
I'll pack a suitcase.
Get on board.
Yeah.
So you were late diagnosed.
Yeah.
What was the trigger that kind of moved you into that space?
It was COVID. And I think,
Ah.
yeah, and I think that'll be a really common theme as we get, I guess we're 5 years out from the very, or six almost, from the very beginning of COVID.
Mm.
Um, and so I think that we'll see a bit more of that. But I love talking about it being through COVID because to kind of put you in the um the era, my COVID era.
Yeah.
Um, I just moved interstate from South Australia and I've since moved back, obviously. That's why I'm here. Um, but I moved interstate to Victoria to go and pursue work. And also it was really good for my husband. So we were kind of like, all right, deal. We're young. We're like 24, 5 at the time. So 20. So much younger. No, so we're 25. We're like, yeah, this is a great time. We're feeling more confident. Like we'll build up our careers. We'll get more experience. We'll make a bit of money. Maybe we'll save for a house. Incoming the COVID house problems as well, but who knows? That was January 2020. So like COVID was this like random thing in some other place that we didn't really know anyway. So inevitably, 6 weeks into us living in Victoria, the COVID pandemic hit. We were all sent home, and Victoria and New South Wales, I think, got the worst of it. But it just crumbled the daily existence that I had, which was this running on empty. It's like um I'm like a phone battery that's being put on charge for like 10 minutes and then being taken off charge again to go and do things. So I'm not getting downtime, I'm not slowing down, I'm not feeling recharged, and so I'm constantly getting sick. I'm having like for the 10 years prior I'd had health problems. I'm going to all these specialists. Why am I so tired all the time is a massive one that I hear with everybody else as well. um I'm having like stomach problems, all these signs of stress and anxiety, and they're going, you're stressed and anxious, and I'm going, isn't everybody this stressed and anxious? um and then, we're at home, my routine's completely thrown out, and I almost just have this crash of something's not right, and I'm reacting to this pandemic in a way that is really like different than I'm seeing around me. Like it's almost like everyone is managing, it sucks, but we're keeping our spirits up, and I have just lost like the I built a life that I was just trying to maintain, and now I'm crashing. What do you mean? And so I was like, well, I need mental health support clearly because I'm anxious all the time and I'm not sleeping and all this other stuff. And it took like a year and a half of that journey. I remember it's so funny. I remember showing up to my first appointment with a psychologist and just saying, I just feel like an alien. And I just felt like I had been doing a really good job at pretending to be a human up until the pandemic hit. And then it's like I just lost all of it was just too much stress. I felt like I was just constantly in survival mode, um, worse than I'd actually realized I was before. And I was like, I feel like an alien, and I can't connect to other people. And there's all these barriers to me to connect and feel like everybody else and feel normal. Um, and I don't know why that psychologist wasn't like, maybe you're autistic. But I think that is also a really common theme to have gone. And in the past, I'd seen lots of psychologists, and I'd done a lot of therapy because I had um, uh, problems with eating and anxiety about eating and being sick, which is also in my little autism wheel, isn't it? So it was all these other things. And then I kept saying like, so what is actually wrong with me? And I guess that's how I'd framed it at that point. I was like, there's something wrong with me and I need to know what it is so I can do something about it. And it was, well, maybe it's like BPD, which is really commonly a misdiagnosis, which really pisses me off because I actually have some strong opinions about. I think borderline personality disorder, like, is overrepresented, overdiagnosed in women. I know it's
Mm.
underdiagnosed in men because of the studies they've done in prison, because that's the biggest male cohort they can get to actually do tests, or screeners. So I know that, and sometimes I think that it's just well, we don't know. Here you go. Like, well, you're all over the place and we don't know. And it's just really unhelpful. Because, if that were the case, I would have been doing the kind of treatment to get myself into remission. I would have been doing it. I've always been really active in trying to take care of myself. And it was just problem after problem after problem and nothing really working. And then bipolar, the one without mania. All of these suggestions, none of which she pursued. And so it took me to be like, hey, can I see maybe like a psychiatrist to review my case or whatever? Because I didn't know how to get a diagnosis and I didn't know what I was going to get was an autism diagnosis. If I had have known, I would have gone and found someone who could give you a good diagnosis. But it was, yeah, a year and a half into that where I saw a psychiatrist and they said, just based on reviewing your information and talking with your psychologist, like, you've got autism. I was like,
Like, it shouldn't be that freaking hard. You
yeah,
present so very typically.
thanks. I'm proud of that. Thank you. I'm proud. I'm proud that people are like, clocked, she's autistic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll be here a week. Like, yeah. And I looking back on it now from as young as I can remember, you're right. I was presenting in a very typical way that someone who is assigned female at birth will present as autistic as a kid. I'm as hyperverbal. Um, I was persistently anxious at school, constantly having anxiety attacks, which were actually like shutdowns or meltdowns.
Mm.
Um, couldn't eat, couldn't like, there's so many things. And it's just like, yeah, couldn't have social conversations in the way that other people did and couldn't understand why I couldn't maintain friendships and why, people would pick me out of the whole class to be the odd one out. Like I'd never understood it. And it was just like, if the people around me had known what that presentation had looked like, it would have been so much easier. But yeah, I know it's funny. It's funny now to think about like that people didn't know. And I just wonder, like, what did people think? Did they just think I was like weird, and like rude, like
Yeah.
doesn't have a conversation well with other people, doesn't play well with other kids, like, yeah. So it's crazy.
Hello, I'm Joanne Hatchard, founder of Better Being Me and creator of Be Me Completely. For years, I worked with families across Australia, helping them understand and support their neurodivergent children. But what I've seen over and over again is a growing number of women silently screaming for help. Women who've spent their lives adapting, masking, and trying to keep everything together, only to realise that they've lost themselves in the process. This is why I've created Be Me Completely, an 8-week program designed specifically for late identifying neurodivergent women. I help you reclaim your identity and embrace who you are. Come with me as we peel back the mask and learn to feel comfort in the world. This isn't about fixing yourself. You are never broken. This is about putting your needs on the table, recognizing your strengths, and learning to live in a way that works for you. Join me for 8 weeks of support backed by a lifetime of access so you can finally remember who you are, because my life is better being me and your life is better being you.
Yeah.
But it's also like there is such a change within the psychological profession now, the awareness, and I think they're even mandating training within neurodivergence, if not specifically autism.
It's getting there. I think and I think the thing is, right, is that I think about how old I am and I know the history because I blah 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 recently did my graduate certificate in autism studies because I was like, well, what are the pros saying about me, huh? I want to know so that I can tell them they're wrong. Like, yeah, I want to be one of them actually. And like looking into the history and like in my lifetime, autism has become a spectrum disorder. Autism has included sensory processing. Autism has been actually studied in people assigned female at birth. That has happened in my lifetime. Like Asperger's was not out of the DSM-5 until 2000, I think is when they. So you just think about no one in my early childhood, early adult, they didn't know that. Nobody knew. The psychs didn't know. Like my poor parents obviously didn't know. But yeah, so I think like if I hope that if, it was me, and that's that is my kind of like main goal, I guess, for my life, is to make it so that someone like me now, as a kid, as a young person, as a kid, as an adolescent, that stuff is being picked up and that stuff is being seen and validated, and they almost don't have to waste an extra 10 years thinking they're weird or anxious and then going on the journey.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then starting it.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
hindsight of 2020 going back for 40 years for me, but
Yep.
that compared to knowing, like if I knew,
Mm. Yeah. I
yeah,
think there's
like the
so much.
choices I would have made would have been so much.
Yeah. Oh my God. I know, right? Oh. And I think that grief is something that
Mm.
like is really important to recognize. And I think part of the journey process is just grieving for that little person who would have benefited so much had one of us as an adult been around to be like, hey, like that's you're not weird and anxious
You
and
might be different, yeah.
yeah, yeah, but you're not wrong.
No,
Yeah.
that's a different, yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can be different from everyone and you
Probably
absolutely
should
should
be.
be. I actually recommend it. Normal people are boring, but you're not wrong, like because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's, I don't know about you, and I talk about this quite a lot, is that I attributed everything down to being left-handed. Like appearance wise, I'm blue-eyed, blonde-haired,
Yeah.
reasonable height, not like, and fairly proportioned nicely. So there was nothing physically obviously
Yeah.
point out wrong with me.
Mm.
The only difference I could see was that I was left-handed, and so I attributed so many things to being left-handed.
Crazy. That's crazy, and I love it. I
It
do love that we're like, oh, we just have to have a reason for it. And
has to be different.
everything was wrong with me was just anxiety.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
sensory processing, that's just anxiety,
Yeah.
which I think it then manifested as these like extreme nervous system responses because I couldn't read what was going on and nobody knew. So it was like my nervous system was then like, yeah, cool, panic attack, anxiety, that works. That
Yeah.
gets us out of this situation. Let's do it. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how much of a coping mechanism it becomes
Yes.
because, and I've talked about this before when I was struggling. I was struggling with reading, writing, spelling, dyslexic. That was another 5 years later.
Shocking.
But mum said, we're not going to change her space that she needs to do the things. We're not going to do the hook writing because that's very uncomfortable. And that's just matching your expectation of what somebody's
Yeah.
writing looks like.
Yep.
And that kind of mentality of, well, let's just give her what she needs so she can do it her way.
Yeah.
That mentality survived me for so long.
Yeah. Yep.
And that it did all pair back to being left-handed. Like that was the beginning of the conversation.
I can't. I'm just thinking, like, if you're a young person experiencing like those differences in reading and writing and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you're just left-handed." What? Like, wait a minute. What? How did somebody not go? Hang on a second here. No, but girls don't have problems with reading and writing. That's boys. Boys have problems with reading and writing.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
And it made sense to me as well,
Yeah.
because I couldn't think of anything other reason.
No.
I was just,
Yeah.
I'm left-handed, so these are all my things of I struggle to make friends and keep going. I think about
People
them.
just hate left-handed people. It's not my fault. They're left-handed discriminators.
Yeah, well, it wasn't actually that long ago where left-handed people were discriminated against.
Exactly. So
So,
you were just you were on it. You were like, yes,
yeah,
I understand. This is what was happening. This is exactly what's happening now.
yeah,
Totally.
yeah. But that
Love
kind of
that.
mentality has helped me so much of my life to go,
Yeah.
well, I'll just take what I need to get
Yeah.
to the end result.
Yeah.
Whereas that's been beneficial for me. You thinking, well, I'll have anxiety,
Yeah.
that will get me out of things. It's not as
No, not really. Nah, not as helpful. No. No. And pair that with a lot of the people around me didn't then know how to help me, and so would say things like, oh, if I pander to you when you are anxious, then it will only serve to reinforce it, which is just astronomically stupid now to look back on and as like professionals. But that's like what adults were like, oh, if the kid in my class is coming up to me saying they're anxious, I'm just gonna be like, oh, you'll be right, get on with it, pat them on the back, send them on their way. Where I'm like having these physiological responses, and you get anxious, your stomach turns, and then I go, oh, I'm gonna throw up, and then it's just, yeah, it wasn't a good way to make sense of it all, and that's why I was like, kept, going back to psychologists. I kept asking, hello, hey, what's wrong with me? I'm doing all this therapy I remember doing therapy because what they said I had was health anxiety, which is about food, and because I have a really discomfort with like being physically ill, like throwing up, trigger warning, emetophobia, because I hate talking about it. But it was since I was very, 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 very young, and I'm going to these psychologists, and they're saying, let me do health anxiety stuff, and it's like exposure therapy and all this. Yeah, look, I know, look, I already know how you're gonna react. I already know. Be like, what the fuck? So I'm going to these like psychologists, and they're like, oh yeah, like, expose yourself to new foods and realize that it's going to be okay. Like, find ways to cope with going to public restrooms, which is a massive trigger. And I'm realizing now it's all like sensory processing and smells and texture, and then also the sensory of being ill is like incredibly uncomfortable. So it's all of those things. So that wasn't working. And I'm like, why isn't it working? So that also made blaming anxiety really bad, because it meant that I was just like, well, I'm anxious. Why am I anxious? And then people were trying to help you. We don't know why. Yeah.
Just feeding into the anxiety and
Yep. Yes.
prolonging it, and then
Yep.
adding other new triggers to
Yeah.
it.
And it becomes an identity to be anxious. And,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just anxious. Those are things I get anxious about. And I can't make accommodations for myself because everyone's like, well, just the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get. And I'm like, why am I still not comfortable with this? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how has it been since the diagnosis then?
Um, yes, that's 4 or 5 years ago now. Um, awesome and terrible and amazing and really difficult all at the same time. Um, and I'm still surprised. Still get surprises. Still surprised in the last like couple of months that apparently I've got ADHD. Oh, why did everybody else know that except me?
Oh, I'm sure it probably came up in conversations over a long.
It did. Do you know how it came up in conversation? People are like, oh, do you think you have ADHD? And me, being autistic, took that literally and said, no, 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 I don't think I do. Okay, well, just because you think you don't doesn't mean you don't. But so it's still every day is a new
thing.
But I think like I really, really like where I am at the point now in my journey. I think right at the beginning, it was like this relief. Right at the beginning, I got the diagnosis, and all of a sudden, this is the exact way that I describe it, is like, instead of being a not well functioning, struggling neurotypical, I was a perfectly fine autistic person. And I was like, oh, I finally stopped going to psychologists repeatedly, trying to deal with this anxiety and being like, just tell me what's wrong with me so I can fix it. And then somebody goes, you can't fix being autistic. And I'm like, oh. So I was like, well, okay, I can't fix being autistic. That's great. So there's a therapy program, a 10-week therapy program I can do to go and fix it. Great. So that was a relief, but it was also a process of like, how do I merge my identity that I have had and I have built for 25 years with the identity of this autistic person? And I think what sometimes is missed is that representation, right? So the more representation we have of what autistic people look like, and the various I guess the easier it feels for me to be like, oh, that's me, and like they're great and fine, and actually I love them. So that's a really positive way to see it. But I think right at the beginning, I didn't have a lot of that. And so I was like, how do I merge these different identities? And I guess I'm really structural and I see things in really like structural ways. And so I'm thinking, so this is me, and then all these problems that I have are autism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was a really unhelpful way to see it for me. I couldn't process what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about it a lot, and I think that that's really important, but people were getting annoyed and being like, why is everything autism? And I'm like, well, because that's my brain. But people are getting sick of that conversation. I'm just like, I'm trying to merge this part of me that I don't want to have, but I can't separate, and I need to find a way to sit where then. So I was like, every now and then I'll have this like very serious conversation with my partner about something. I'll be like, I've been thinking about this for many weeks, and here is my five
Here's my
million
thesis.
thoughts that I have had.
Yeah.
Here's an information dump. And he's really great at putting things into perspective.
Mm.
Love that.
Yeah.
Could never be me. But he what did he say? I think I was saying like, you know, oh, that's my autism or whatever. And he's
Mm.
like, it's really not helpful for you to say that all these good things about you are you, and then all these bad things he doesn't think they're bad. But all these things that you perceive to be bad about you as your autism. That's really unhelpful. He said to me, nothing isn't um you, and nothing isn't autistic. You are autistic, and so therefore everything about you is autistic, and every trait you have is autistic, and that's fine. And you're good because of who you are, and you won't be who you are without it. You won't be this like perfect, amazing human minus all of these things you struggle with. If you weren't autistic, you wouldn't be you. All those wonderful things that people love about you and see as really positive things about you are also autistic, and that's okay. And I think that was like this light bulb moment where I was like, oh, I can't compartmentalize the autism anymore. It's got to be me. And the kind of probably like a year or so of it took me to get there of processing that. But that was the moment where it was almost like that's when I really started the journey. Like that's when I really started going, okay, how do I make this work for me? How do I tell people around me so that they can support me? How do I tell the workplace? How do I tell my relationships? How do I make this part of my, like, how do I, you know, person that I am that is all parts of me all together, and that's perfectly okay. So that was good. And I think that has kind of just been where I've been at for a couple of years, and it's made me more like, obviously it's like really sparked the advocacy part of me. It has really been fulfilling to learn and talk to other people and be someone who can share information and be someone that can represent what it looks like to be neurodivergent, to be autistic, to be ADHD. Like people can go, oh, like that. Yeah, that's what it's like. So that's really great. I think the more I see it in being represented in different ways in media, the more yeah, the it's just like feels so much. And I guess like you get to a point neurodivergent, and so you forget that the real world out there is neurotypical and boring, and
A little bit, a little bit.
it's a bit to that point. Yeah. Yeah.
But you bring up
And
a
then I
real.
guess the last little bit of my journey has been, oh,
No, you go.
go.
You go. The last little bit of
Oh,
your
I
journey has
think the
been.
last little bit about yeah, has been helping the people around me also figure out that they're neurodivergent, you know? That's kind of, yeah, I think that's almost the next step. It's like, okay, so I got it from somewhere, so which one are you? And um and my twin brother actually was diagnosed 10 years before me, because he's a boy
Mm.
and boys can be autistic. Um and even him, I would consider that was really a late diagnosis, being like 15. But um yeah, so even just talking to him about it, and you know, the rest of my siblings, my family, that has been the kind of next journey where it's like, you know, they can see that it's been so beneficial for me and that it's not something they have to be worried about. So yeah, that's where I'm at, I think.
Amazing. So many bits to pick up from there, but very interesting that your brother, twin brother got diagnosed 10 years earlier, and yet you were presenting with so many typical
Mm,
symptoms, right? And
yep.
and the psychologist was like, oh, I don't know.
Yes.
But also the other point that is really beneficial, and I see a lot of people do this at the moment of, is this my autism? Is this my anxiety? Is this my ADHD? Makes no fucking difference what it is.
No.
It's how you're going
Nah.
to create the accommodations and how you're going to soothe your nervous system so that you can bring it back down. I would love to say zero, but it's never going to be zero. So let's not aim for zero. Let's say just
No.
down.
Yeah.
And it's like, I need you to stop that conversation of, oh, that's just my ADHD. Well, fucker, what are you going to do about it? Like,
Yeah, but
that's
it's also
not the end of the
it's not
conversation.
just your ADHD, it's
Mm,
you.
yeah, you cannot carve. Well, you could probably carve bits of your brain out, but I can't guarantee
Sorry, my
that you
internet's
get,
being a bit funny.
oh,
I can
my
see it.
darling.
Sorry. I can see the little light flashing going, I'm not working properly, but I think it's fine. It's just unstable. I'll hopefully no one else is using the internet and that's not why. Um, I might have to pause and text and make sure that they're
Oh,
not.
let me just pause.
No.
I was saying, like, you could go for a lobotomy, but no guarantee that the bit they take out is going to be the ADHD because the
That's
whole brain thing.
I love that joke though, and probably really offensive to other people, but I'm always like, yep, just a coffee and a lobotomy would be great, actually. And I think that is probably a reaction to I think in my family, mental health has been this like really scary boogeyman.
Mm,
Um, and I think that I've talked about it with my family. I think that it was actually the older generations in my life being autistic and going into burnout and having these really awful kind of mental health episodes because of that. And so in my family, it was like, oh no, like it's the big bad wolf. It's scary. And that's how I cope with it. I make jokes about it because I would have probably been lobotomized.
oh yeah, I don't drink coffee, so that would have been a problem. Lobotomy for you, young girl.
Yep. I can't survive without coffee, my matcha, they're my things. They make my life much better.
Improved. Can you say ADHD? Uh, oh no, you've frozen. Come back to me. Ah, there we are. Yay.
I know, I'm sorry. I can tell that it's not working.
That's right. Most of it's been pretty
Why
good.
now of all times?
And what about your acceptance between the two diagnoses? What do you reckon? Do you reckon the journey is going to be quicker for the ADHD acceptance, or is it going to
I
be?
hope so. I really hope so. It better be. Hurry up. Get on with it. Um, I think I think initially I was like, what do you mean? Why can't I just have one thing to deal with? But I mean it's astronomical. Up to 70% of people who are autistic also have ADHD. And I suspect that one day it'll probably be it's a whole spectrum together because I just think there's so much overlap. But I think the only thing that stops that is that, ADHD, the first kind of one of their it's real medicalized, so it's about medication and stuff. And I think that's what will prevent it. But to be honest, I think it's all part of the same. Well, it is. It's all neurodivergence, isn't it? But I think it's
Neuro.
probably more of a spectrum than we than we currently diagnose it as.
Yeah, it's interesting. Somebody suggested I had ADHD once, and I went, "No, I'm just masking, and you've got ADHD." And then they suggested that perhaps me
Oh, that's
dithering
funny.
around at home by myself when I'm masking for nobody might be a fair indicator. But yeah. The acceptance.
Probably. Yeah. Um, I think I find really interesting to go back to my bandwidth is low, apparently. That's what's wrong with my computer now. I what I find really interesting about how different and how masking comes into being so different than from my twin brother, like we are literally the same, um, is that we were kind of almost like polar opposites of each other. So whereas he was, didn't speak up, he didn't like to talk, he didn't socialize. I was constantly talking. I was constantly trying to talk to people. And so we were both exhibiting the same trait, like difficulty maintaining, holding a conversation in that back and forth kind of way,
Mm,
but in totally different ways. And I think that maybe potentially, don't know, that might have gotten in the way because people would see me and say, oh, she's only acting like that because of her brother, he's not talking, so therefore she's talking for him. Whereas
yeah.
I could have had no one there and I would have been talking. I would have been yapping.
Agreeing and disagreeing with yourself
Mm-hmm.
all the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Exactly.
do love that your journey has, I mean, you're obviously with social work
Yeah.
before the diagnosis, but I think
Yep.
it's amazing that the amount of work that you've done in the past supporting and uncovering the kind of the under the cover neurodivergence. And now you're
Yeah.
bringing that out into private practice and supporting the general
Thanks.
population. Tell me a little bit more about
Yeah.
neurotopical.
Um, well, the name is like a little play on um not being neurotypical, not neurotypical therapy, and just about being up to date with neurodiverse stuff. So that's kind of where that word comes from. But it really truly came out of um finding out what's meaningful and what I really value and what I really want to do with my career. Um, and I guess last year I really had a moment like early on where I was like, I don't really know if what I'm doing now, um, which was working in therapy in the prison systems. I don't really know if what I'm doing now is really fulfilling that like the value that I have in my advocacy and all the things that are really meaningful and important to me. Um, and I think I tried to incorporate some of that into my work, and a very steep uphill climb, which is really typical for government systems. So and I think sometimes I try to be responsible for the fight, and it's not my fight. Sometimes I'm just one piece of the puzzle. I can't be the only one fighting. So I was like, oh, go back to uni. That'll kind of keep my brain active. And the more I sat in on my tutorials and the more people I talked to, the more I was like, oh, I love doing therapy. I just want to be doing this all the time. I want to be talking about this. I want to be doing the work that makes autistic lives better. I want to be that representation for a and even an adult, people who are diagnosed, they need to see people that succeed and they know that they can succeed. That's what I really wanted, and I wanted to be that. Um, and yeah, I just think after it's about 6 years of doing therapy, that I was like, I'm so confident in my therapy skills. I've done all the kind of the usual training of like acceptance and commitment therapy, which is my favorite. I've done DBT training. I do a lot of CBT. I had opportunities to write programs. I was like, therapy is my bread and butter. And making the world better for autistic people and helping people in their day-to-day lives is really important to me. And I was like, that I guess I just hit a point where I was like, it's just far more important to me to be doing that work and
Mm,
finding that. Um, and I found it so far. It hasn't been forever and ever, but so far I've just found it so fulfilling and it just feels so correct and right. And I guess that nervous system thing where you're like, oh, I'm anxious all the time. I just feel really calm about it all. I'm like, this is where I'm meant to be going next. Like this is really meaningful and it's good work and it's something I really value and I can show my most authentic self doing
Hmm.
that. Um, so yeah, so that's why I was like, I got to go out there. I got to go do my little private practice. I got to start and um, I guess share that with the world. And if that's needed, then the people that need that I will find them and it will be good. And partly it's because I wanted to go back and continue studying. So I've um, neurotopical is like almost my little, can fit that around everything else I want to do. Because
Awesome.
I'm really great at doing that thing where I'm like, I'll do this and this and this, and I'll have 500 projects, and then I'll wonder why I'm so tired all the time. Um, so it works better for me to be able to go and do my master's by research, and be in the field while I'm doing that research. So it was kind of all happened all together, and it happened
Mhm.
nicely, and I got the push that I needed to go and, you know,
Make the change.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I would assume, now I don't have the stats on this, but I would assume there is probably a high percentage of neurodivergent folk in the correctional system that have been either undiagnosed or unsupported.
Yeah. I
And
think I think we don't have the stats and that's the problem.
right.
And I wish we did because I know as somebody who is there face to face with them every day that yes, that they are absolutely underdiagnosed, that there isn't a good process to get people diagnosed
Mm,
um at the moment.
mm,
Those are all things that need to be fixed. But yeah, like I don't know, I just yeah, it's very evident that there is a higher population. They're underdiagnosed. They are being labeled with things like, antisocial personality or um, they're being labeled as impulsive and um, their substance use is kind of this big problem. And it's like it's all these things that could be addressed by having a further look. And then it also matters who you interact with. So you might interact with a clinician who is picking up on those things, or you might interact with a clinician who's seeing those traits as something else,
yeah.
as part of your offending profile. And so
Mm,
I do agree. I do think that there will be, hopefully evidence of that, but just in the day-to-day stuff, there's absolutely, oh, there's a large proportion of people who are under undiagnosed, um, and then they're not represented, and then we don't know. And which I think is really great with the autism strategy, the South Australian one. There's a whole section on the correctional system, and so I hope that that pushes it forward.
mm.
But that was really hard to be trying to advocate for those people, um, and not feeling like there was anyone to advocate to.
Yeah. Yeah. So the difference between that and then moving into private practice where you've got willing participants,
Totally.
people that are seeking help or are like looking to understand. So you've kind of gone from one end of the scale where they're kind of a captured audience, quite
Mm,
literally, that might be pushing back on any formal diagnosis or pushing
hmm
back on being categorized, um, versus your client base now, which is from what age up?
I don't really have like
Not a down or up, but
no, not really.
from childhood to adulthood
Mm,
are not captive audience, but willing participants who are
yeah.
seeking help.
They're like, I want you to help me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great, I'm here. I'm ready. And that's half the battle in
Yeah,
prison, I
like,
think.
oh, like this is going to be too easy. What are we going to do for the next half an hour?
Oh my God. Yeah, it's been a nice change. I will say that. I like I think I did a lot of different kind of volunteering roles, and for a couple of years I volunteered while I was at uni, volunteered with a a high school class as a mentor from uni to be like, hey, like let's like uni's an option in a low socioeconomic area. So, you know, a lot of them didn't have
Yeah, didn't have.
family who had gone to uni, didn't have, I mean, they had lots of barriers too, and I don't want to um ignore that
Yeah.
because they had expectations that they would be making money for the family because there was not enough money coming in to
Mm.
stay afloat. Um, but my favorite part about that was walking in and, you know, half of the too cool for school teenagers were like, "Mm, whatever, trying to like, you know,
Yeah.
or they try to scare me or they do all sorts of stuff. And the best part is you get to like the end of, you know, your first like year with them and they're like, you're great. Well, I think you should stay. And I'm like, me too. I won. I won you over.
I was thinking like this is, you know, how, you know, Never Been Kissed Drew Barrymore's going back to
Yeah.
high school. I'm like, they love me now. Look at me.
Yep.
I am the cool kid.
I'm so cool. Yeah, it's great. That's I think working with people who might not necessarily want to come to the party. I think there's something really rewarding about that, but it definitely drains on your emotional resources,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I work a lot with parents of kids that aren't interested in engaging in therapy.
Fair.
And you know, there's just no point in it because there's already a hostile environment and they perceive any therapist as a threat. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to push that more. But what I am going to do is support the parents so they can understand what's happening for their kid so much more and create change in their environment, create a change in their approach and
Yeah.
their understanding. And I have found that that has been so successful.
Yeah.
Um, and often, you know, the kid is then interested in this weird lady that comes.
Well, I guess she's here all the time, so
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. And I think that that's just something that is so great about being able to be in private practice is to go this almost non-direct route where you're really making a difference and you but you don't, you know, it's not that traditional like you have to see the child. It's
Mm,
like, no, you know, building the capacity for their parents and understanding and building a world that works for their family. You know, that's some really meaningful change, and I think that's really great. I think that's so beneficial about and such a positive about going into private practice.
yeah. Amazing. And, you know, social workers are just
Mm.
amazing. Full
We
stop.
are great. I love us. I love social work. I don't think lots of people have asked me if I would go into psych.
Mm,
Um, I guess for things like being able to diagnose other people and to be able to kind of have a voice in that realm. And I just don't think it aligns with my values. And I think that that's okay. And I think that the more as a society we see different professionals for what they can provide, the better off we are. And I think I did a little post on my Instagram the other day about like what is the actual difference between social work and psychology because it can almost be the same thing, but you know, social workers come from a different value base, I think. Like we have different ideas about the world than potentially a psychologist, I think. I
mm,
think that those differences are slowly coming together. So I think that potentially psychologists see less of the biomedical model now than they would have back in the day.
mm,
And I think that, yeah, social workers being able to learn about when someone does want to be kind of in that biomedical model and that's a real learning for me. I had to be like, what do you mean people want treatment? They want to fix things. What do you mean biomedical model? It's that's the worst thing ever. And it's like, well, actually there's some benefits to that. Um so yeah, I think I I I hope for
mm.
people to understand more what social work is about and that because I just love being a social worker and I have to give up getting to diagnose people, but it means that you know who I am from
Yeah.
my yeah, from my background. You just you know that that's you can't study social work without it being a part of you and a part of like your value.
That's it. I did try and do, I like the Magdis I did that training. I liked that method. I started the ADOS. I got grumpy. I got so fucking grumpy.
Mm. You know what I would really like to see is diagnostic tools that are created with autistic people.
Yeah.
Um, that is probably some I don't probably need to go and get my psych degree to do that. Like I can go into research to do that. So that's probably more where I would want to focus on a
Mhm.
diagnosis wise. I want tools to be created with people because right now it's all like yeah, it's this observational, what do we see? Um and they can be great tools, but if people are not trained properly in them or they don't have that kind of diverse understanding of how different people can be who are autistic. Yeah. So,
Yeah, they're picking up on the wrong cues, aren't they?
yes.
Yeah, like even in the training that I did, they were like, "Oh, that play's really unusual." I'm like, "What the fuck was so unusual about it? It made perfect sense to me." So
Mm.
I was getting really angry, but then it kind of hit me. I can't use this tool because what is an autistic child doing that other people, like a neurotypical person, would pick up, I see as play.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. So there
Yeah.
would have been a whole bunch of autistic people that I would have gone, yep, 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 yep.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
good. Or
Yeah, that's so funny, and that's crazy to me. So you're telling, like, it's just it does really show this disparity where it's like, oh, if we're doing it based on things looking strange in observational data, like I'm not going
yeah,
to see other autistic people doing things. I'm going to go, oh, love hanging out with these
yeah,
people,
yeah.
love this kind of play, love this. That's going to draw me in and
Mm,
seem really normal to me.
mm.
Um, yeah, so I think potentially creating it with people or the autistic community and having those tools um, be accessible to autistic clinicians. That would be great,
That would be amazing.
wouldn't it?
I do like the Magnus. That made me happy because that was more of a narrative of, explain what the inner world is like and let's
Yeah.
get through the sensory stuff. But that doesn't work well with children
No.
who don't have the language of explaining the internal world at the
Yeah.
moment. So there's a gap between having to be perceived to get the diagnosis
Yeah.
versus older people can get the Magnus, which is the explorative, which I like a lot more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went, nope, not my bucket. That's my fuck it bucket.
Do you know what? Turns out you can't do everything, Joanne. I
Hmm.
know. Isn't that awful? I also hate that realization. What do you mean? What do you mean I can't do all of it?
But I tried.
That's what matters.
Then I'll start something else instead. I'll
Yeah.
do my own diagnosis too. No, I won't.
Yeah, we will. We will. See, 5, 10 years from now, it'll be us. We'll be the authors of the new diagnostic tools. Yeah.
I love that Magnus is actually named after herself. Um, there's not there's not one person who I've gone, I think we probably need to sit down and have a talk about this. Once they've gone through the process, haven't gone, oh, Joanne, you were wrong. And then, oh, Joanne, guess what? I'm like, oh,
That's so funny.
I'm not surprised.
Funny that.
Yes, I can see the tism in you.
I love it. I I better have a neon sign above my head that says autistic.
Yeah, I think headphones and sunglasses tend to give the vibe, so I'm good.
They do.
Got it sorted. What wisdoms would you give the onboarding generation to the neurodivergent space, be it not just autism or ADHD, but like really embracing any of the neurodivergence?
Oh, fight back. That's my advice. Fight back. Fight
Yeah.
back. You're not like really like what you have to give and what you have to share and who you are as a person is so worth going, "No, I'm not doing that actually. I'm actually not going to fit into the box that you want me to fit into and I'm going to be okay." I think there's so many systems that they're constantly fighting. I'm thinking about young people being kind of like told they have to show up to work to school
Mm.
all day, right? I can't show up to work 9 to 5 without completely burning out 5 days a week. No way. Like I get to lunchtime. I'm so overstimulated. I've eaten and now I'm overstimulated from being full. So I gotta leave. I gotta leave or I'm gonna freak out. Um, get me out of here. Everyone's like, yeah, I love an afternoon after lunchtime nap. I'm like, I'm so aware of the food in my stomach right now. I must get away from you all. Um, can't process that and the fluorescence at the same
Yeah.
time. Um, the fact that we expect the next kind of this younger generation to be fitting what everybody else wants, like fight back, say no, but
Mhm.
be really like, no, what you want and what you have to share is like is worthy, and find the people around you who will back you on that and will go, yeah, no.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
because I will be one of those people. I will be with you. Yeah, and don't stop talking about it. Even when people say that you talk too much about being autistic, just keep talking about it because
Yeah.
that
Find a different
someone,
crowd.
yeah, yes, definitely find new friends. Um,
Not about new friends, but find a different crowd. Like I understand wearing people down with the same conversation, been there, done that, probably do it again tomorrow.
yeah, I will,
But
yeah.
it is finding a new audience because
Yeah.
it's a verbal processing that I do it as well. I
Yeah.
need to talk about this embarrassing thing that happened to me just to see what your response is. And I'm
Yeah.
going to keep on talking about it until I'm either not reactive to it anymore or it makes
Mm.
sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, don't feel like you've got to, I guess, hide all that part of you. And I don't know. It it's cool. It's cool to be different, I think, actually. And like it's okay to this is really important, I think, advice wise for the next generation of journey. It's okay to not want to be autistic. And it's okay. So it's okay to one day be like, I love myself. I love being autistic. I love that I get to enjoy life and hyperfixate. And those poor people who don't get to hyperfixate on things, it must be so hard to like
Mm.
not really get all that real joy from special interests and stuff. And I have days like that, and I still have days where I'm like, oh, I would just do anything to just be able to function like everybody else does and get on with it and not have to deal with it. And so I think that that's okay, and like that's totally normal. And don't feel like just because you see people all the time being like, you know, all of the advocacy that people do and they talk about like it's good and I love who I am and I love being autistic, like that also comes with days where you're like, I hate this so much. Like, why does this have to be so hard for me?
Mm.
Um, yeah, it both is actually okay. You can have both.
Both can be true.
Yep.
Isn't that
Yeah.
DC?
That's DBT.
DBT.
The two, what is
Two
that?
things can be true.
Yep, I do love that. I do. It is one of my go-tos because I am so concrete. Um, yeah, I think they called me like I'm
Rigidity.
rigid thinking. But I'm so concrete, and so just learning that, oh, like it can both be true, that this and this. Oh, that's great. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I my partner, like I need it to be pointed out to me, and I point it out to everyone else. I need it to be pointed out to me what rules I have created in my head. Like we're hoping to get to Canada in June, July, and I'm like get really hyper fixated on it and really stressed if it doesn't look like it's going to happen, and then I'm getting
Mm.
anxious about getting on a plane. Like it's a whiles away, and Brad goes, um, there are other months in the year. I'm like, what the fuck?
Shocking. What do you mean? Right, actually, yeah, I relate to that so much. And I do have to check in. Is this an actual rule or is this a rule I've made up that I must follow and gives me comfort to follow and something I can probably go, hang on a minute.
We can change this. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Canada
Yeah.
does exist outside of these months.
Really?
Hmm. Yeah,
Wow. That's
ask
shocking.
Trump about that. And,
Oh, let's
and it
not.
is okay to
I
go.
got in trouble once.
"Oh,
Oh, I got in trouble in and at work, and I was like, whoopsie, can't keep my opinion to myself. Sorry. They're like, you're apolitical. I was like, yeah, but he's still a bad guy. So like, I don't have to disagree or agree with his politics to know that he is not a great guy.
like him." Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's not a politically. That's like
That's
just
not, yeah, that's not a
personality.
political opinion. He's just not a good guy.
That's Nothing to do with politics.
Yeah, truly.
Did you see, side quest. Did you
Please.
see people are tagging him as autistic? I'm like, I get where you're coming
Yeah.
from, but you
No,
can still be an arsehole and be
he
an
in
autistic.
an Elon. Oh well, they're saying Trump is autistic.
Yeah.
Oh God, no. Really? Okay. Well, I know that Elon Musk came out a couple of years ago and said that
Mm,
he thinks he's got Asperger's,
yeah.
but never got
I struggle
diagnosed.
so hard not to say Asperger's.
I do say Asperger's. I do. I do say Asperger's. I love it, actually. And yeah, it's kind of funny because it kind of is.
Yeah.
It's not really it's like we think you're okay enough to not have like a
Not full blown.
disability. So you're
Yeah.
good, you're fine. It's so funny. It is Asperger's. Oh no, I didn't see that about Trump. I try to avoid. This is
Yeah.
one of my things. I get such compassion fatigue, and so I have to
Mhm.
avoid constantly consuming the news because I
Yeah.
will, and then I
Mhm.
will cry. And I'll be
Yeah.
like, what am I going to do about it? What can I do
And
about Trump firing all of the national park employees? Like, what can I do about that?
not vote for Trump. Well done, that. Oh, and also Jerry Seinfeld. I clocked him ages ago, but he's decided
Oh,
himself. I'm like, no shit,
nice.
Sherlock. Thanks for getting on board.
That's not my vibe. Seinfeld is not my vibe, but I can see it.
Mm, yeah, crazy. Not crazy. That's the wrong. There's a whole bunch of middle-aged white men, not even middle-aged, like late life white men that are going, oh, Bill Gates.
Oh yeah.
Like, no shit.
Oh.
Elon Musk, Trump. Now they're trying as if
Mm.
it's gonna.
Can he just be a jerk? Can we not? Can we not
Wait, two
just?
things can be true.
That's true.
Two
You can
things can
also
be
be
true.
autistic and an a-hole at the same time.
Yeah, you
I
can be
would
a
know.
fucking asshole. Practice it every day. I'm autistic and also a bitch.
Yep. Put it on a shirt.
Well, thank you so very, very much for your time today.
Thank
A
you.
pleasure talking to you and
You
sharing your
too.
experience. I'm really excited to share your story. And if anybody's listening to this podcast and thinking that Amelia's story will be able to support somebody they know in their life, then please share this with them, because sharing is caring. And it's the only way our stories get sent through. Amelia, would you like to say bye for now?
Yes, you can find me Neurotopical Therapy. It's an O instead of a Y because we don't do neurotypical therapy. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, and you can find my websites neurotopicaltherapy.com.au if you want to have a cyber stalk. Um, and hopefully we get to chat again soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Yay, more chatting.
Yeah.
I will put all links in the what are they, story notes? All links below.
Link in bio.
Yeah, link in bio. There we go. Okay, bye.
I love it.
If this episode has resonated with you, chances are it'll resonate with someone else too. Sharing the podcast is one of the best ways to help others who might be feeling stuck, unheard, or just needing a little nudge towards understanding themselves better. So if you found something useful here today, take a moment to share it. Send it to a friend, post it in a group, or even just screenshot it and pop it in your socials. Tag me so I can say thank you. If you haven't already, hit follow, leave a review, or rate the show. It makes a huge difference in getting this out to more people who need it. Your support means the world. Thank you for being here.